Yeah, so today, chat, we're talking about important things. We are making all the connections chronologically that are related to what the evil elites are doing. And I know I've never done a stream like that before. Actually, we were viewing this interview of a victim of human trafficking, of child trafficking last year, of Anneke Lucas. And some of you guys were serious about it. Some of you were like thinking that she's making it up. I know, and I believe her. I don't know her, but I believe her. I know this shit happens, so I feel like this video is going to YouTube for sure. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch the full video on my Daya Sims channel on YouTube. We're going to view a bunch of videos together, and I'm going to make the connections and try and put my input. Some of the videos are mine from years ago, and gonna try and not get too personal. Hopefully I'll make it. But yeah, this is the topic. We're starting from the beginning of the beginnings. The war in heaven. Because that's where it starts. Because this whole thing is spiritual. But yeah, chat, we're starting from the beginning. And then gradually we're going to get to the topic of what's going on with Epstein and why they're doing what they're doing. And there's going to be some really shocking info in there in the middle, especially if you haven't been following. And I'm not going to go into any graphic stuff. I don't want to trigger anyone. Gonna try and keep this more intellectual and, you know, like surface level in terms of like the bloody stuff that they've been doing, but still informative. Hopefully you guys like. God is good. God is absolutely good. And we're starting with God. So we're starting with the beginning. It all started with the war in heaven.
The great war in heaven. I mean, you really have to understand how much majesty was given unto Adam. From the very start, humanity was God's favorite creation. I mean, after all, we were given an entire planet to rule over. You see, being created in the image of God, our very purpose was to rule over the earth like God does in heaven. See, this glorious status was only reserved for humans. So when the prince of the lower order of angels sees this, he gets pissed. One of heaven's mightiest angels was Lucifer. He was this most magnificent being made of fire and spirit. In fact, there's reason to believe that Lucifer was one of the very first angels ever created.
Yeah.
After all, he used to be a bright and morning star. But you probably already knew about this. However, something that isn't really talked about is just how much authority this guy actually had. You see, Lucifer, according to this Egyptian legend, was the prince of the lower order of the angels. They actually describe him to be this ruler over his own division, making him some kind of general with proper authority and power. So when God created Adam and gave him dominion over the entire earth, Lucifer, who thought of himself very highly, would get entirely filled with jealousy. Adam, on the other hand, was just made from dust.
That's really funny that you mentioned that Lucifer means bringer of light in some ancient language. But yeah, his actual name in Hebrew is Hillel ben Shachar, which means like the son of the morning star. So the Lucifer thing comes from the Greek translation, and they've twisted names so much to a point where we don't even know what it means. But he's the bearer of the false light.
Though at the very start he was shining brilliantly with light, Adam would only be made from the ground of the earth. He wasn't a magnificent being of fire like the angels.
From dirt, from dust.
But Adam was still created to be a reflection of God himself.
And Lucifer
God loved Adam
jealous.
so much that he gave him the entire world and everything in it.
Yeah,
Adam
he's
was
still
to
an
rule
angel.
over all life, and all life was to serve Adam. You see, Lucifer must have already been jealous. He led his army, he was a prince, he was the most beautiful of all. But Lucifer was never given dominion over a world. So when God announces that all angels have to serve Adam, Lucifer officially has enough. Addressing his legions, he finally proclaims, "Why should we serve this creature made of dust?" So inspired by...
He proclaimed in his heart that he's going to raise a throne for himself over the throne of God the Creator himself. And pride was his sin.
A raging jealousy. 1/3 of the angels joined Lucifer. You see, starting from here, a revolution had begun.
That's the beginning
Lucifer
of the
would
war.
now declare independence from God. Lucifer had declared war on the Almighty himself. I mean, the level of arrogance is absolutely stupendous to me. At this point, Lucifer really thinks he can defeat his creator. The pride, the hatred had absolutely blinded him to the fact that this was suicide.
After pride comes destruction, that's what the Bible says. And the problem is that when you tell lies, you start telling lies to yourself, and then you start living in a delusion, and then you start believing these delusional ideas of, I can ruin my creator.
But there is no rest for the wicked.
But angels
Lucifer,
can
this
shapeshift.
highly
So
esteemed chief cherub, was now utterly consumed
they
with
can
rebellion.
pretend to be humans. That one.
So with the fate of Lucifer sealed, the angels charge at each other with a roaring battle cry, and this cosmic clash between good and evil takes place. And at this point, there was no more turning back. Prototype to this story actually involved Egyptian gods like Set and Ra. In the oldest form of this story, Set, the devil, rebels against the god of heaven and gets utterly destroyed.
And that actually makes sense because in the continuation of this story, once we progress with the timeline order of things, we're going to address the fact that some of these ancient gods with small g are actually part of the group of the fallen angels who joined Lucifer or Hillel ben Shachar in the fall from heaven.
In another form,
So
Set
they
makes war
pretend
on
to be
Horus,
gods
the son of
because they want to
Osiris,
be
and then
worshipped.
on Osiris himself. You see, these stories were actually borrowed from hieroglyphics and then later
So far,
Christianized.
so good.
But don't disregard the story just yet. You see, in the book of Enoch, we learn about this secondary group of angels that come down from heaven before the flood. They, just like Lucifer, wanted to be worshipped and adored. So after these fallen angels come down from heaven, they would end up posing as false gods that would clutter
Exactly.
the earth in those days. You see, a lot of these fallen angels are generally associated with these Egyptian gods, like Ra and Osiris. There is a distinct possibility that the Egyptian gods in this story are actually Lucifer and his angels from a very long time ago. I wonder how much truth there is to this story.
It also says that they fell on the Mount of Hermon, which is in the north of Israel. That's pretty close to Egypt.
Now, in the end, I realized that the beauty of this story doesn't lie in the historical or biblical accuracy, but rather in the lessons they
Book of
teach.
Nod.
This story has
don't wanna review
endured
this
through the
crazy?
ages
No.
for a reason.
This video was great to tell the story about the beginning. Why did the beginning happen like that? Because Satan was jealous of humankind. Humankind was a beloved creation of God, and he wanted to rule over humankind. And when he was sent away from heaven, his spite and his jealousy went into a new idea of trying to ruin the creation itself. He hates us. He hates us. There is no empathy. There is no warmth in him. He's the father of lies. He doesn't care about murdering and lying and destroying. That's all he does. And so we're going to the next video. Why are the elites set to worship Moloch? Moloch is one of these false gods. And I think Moloch is either, like one of these fallen angels of Satan's rule, or maybe a son of them. I don't know.
Power feeds on what it cannot reveal. But sometimes, paradoxically,
Of course, hi.
it reveals
It's
itself
good to see you. How
in
you
order
doing?
to
Good?
stay hidden. That's the unsettling paradox at the heart of a growing theory. It reveals itself in order to stay hidden. That's the unsettling paradox at the heart of a growing theory. Most powerful elites,
The language
whether
was
consciously
Bulgarian.
or
That's best.
theatrically, revere Moloch.
Moloch, by the way, is this entity that requires human sacrifice. In specificity, suffering of very, very young human life.
Not as a god of faith or prayer, but as a symbolic structure, a kind of dark mirror they hold up to the systems they control.
Unsure of the TOS.
Because Moloch doesn't need belief. He only needs obedience. Moloch, as an archetype, represents a particular kind of order. One where the destruction of innocence isn't a moral failure, but a functional necessity. Take Bohemian Grove. There,
That's
a
beautiful.
towering stone owl presides
By the way, they
over
do
a
this
mock
ritual every
sacrifice
single year.
known as the cremation of care, a
Every
ritual
year.
in which the spirit of
At
compassion
least.
is symbolically burned. This is not fringe conspiracy,
Symbolically,
it's
huh?
documented. Presidents, CEOs, military leaders, all participating in a theatrical display of the annihilation of empathy beneath an idol associated with ancient
sadistic.
judgment,
It's not
darkness,
just lacking
and
empathy.
silent oversight.
I think they derive pleasure from
This
the
isn't
suffering.
religious worship, it's psychological framing. It's ritual as justification.
What does
A
that
way
mean,
for
Kurt?
those who run systems that consume lives through war, exploitation, or economic machinery to cleanse themselves, not with remorse, but with performance. The stage replaces guilt. The symbol replaces shame. So why Moloch? Because no other figure represents the machinery of sacrifice with such precision. In ancient times, Moloch wasn't worshipped privately. He was state-sanctioned. The rituals weren't secret. They were civic. It wasn't a cult. It was policy.
How crazy to live in such times, huh?
The destruction of the most innocent wasn't a failure of the system. It was the very proof that the system worked.
It's a
And
part
this
of
is
the
where the
system,
modern parallel becomes terrifyingly clear.
sadly.
It's not that they believe in Moloch. It's that Moloch explains how the world works when conscience is irrelevant and efficiency is king. And that's what
And all
makes
they
this
care
so
about
chilling.
is power.
Because once sacrifice becomes systematized, it no longer feels like evil. It feels like order.
Yeah, because they desensitize themselves. Once you start seeing the same evil and over and over and over again, that's why, like, some of these corn sites can be so addictive because you want to go deeper and deeper into the stuff. Once you start seeing more and more violent things, you want more to light up the same centers of your brain the way it used to before. Like, there has to be some level of novelty, and that's scary. We kind of like grow out of empathy once we start doing that.
Even messianic figures like Christ or Mithras stand for the protection of the innocent, the inversion of power, or redemption. This figure has no interest in saving the innocent.
Yeah, because it's inverted. By the way it has these wings kind of reminds you of an angel, doesn't it?
It demands them. That is the key.
This isn't the Matrix. No.
That's what I've always been asking to Des.
It's another training program.
It's a
designed to
symbol
teach
that you're in the Matrix,
If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
and physics rules don't apply
Sentient
if you're
programs.
awake.
They can move in
It's
and
like a
out of
lucid
any
dream.
software still hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent. Inside the Matrix, they are everyone, and they are no one. Someone is going to have to fight them.
Someone.
I won't lie to you, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
How amazing is that? You won't have to. You don't have to. And this is what Jesus says in the Bible. He that is not with me is against me, and he that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad. So you either gather with him or you scatter. There's no middle ground. There's no grace. There's nothing in the middle. And this is about the fallen angels. So since Satan couldn't rule over us, and he's been trying, and now he kind of like has built this beast system where he almost is, he's been trying to meddle with our DNA. And here is one more video about the dark truth about fallen angel experiments in the Book of Enoch. I'm just gonna play it. It's only 6 minutes long.
The
And
Book of
this
Enoch
is
explained a
all-
group.
This is all biblical. And some people would say that, you know, the Book of Enoch is not canon. It's not a part of the 66 books. But it is in Ethiopia. Maybe there's some truths in there that they don't want us to know about. And just a side note, and it's a joke, but today I was playing The Sims, and I do these TikToks of my Sims. I had just been creating these elites because I'm so freaking mad at the world and how there's no justice. So I've been saying we're going to create all the elites in The Sims, and I've been creating them one by one, and then we're going to place them in that, you know, that house on the island. And today I was playing my normal save file. I was playing with this teenager, and she had this day at school where she's in high school. She had this day at school that they're supposed to have a career day. So basically, they go into a different building, and a bunch of different professionals from all walks of careers come into the auditorium to talk about their careers and to answer questions to the teenagers, right? And so I'm like looking all the Sims that have come to lecture my teenagers. One of them was Satan himself. The game loaded from my gallery a sim of freaking Satan and sent it over to the high school to preach to my teenagers about the mischievous career or whatever he's doing. And I was like so proud of my Sims because nobody was listening to him. And I wasn't controlling them. All of my Sims were like walking around, talking to each other, looking at the others. Nobody listened to Satan. So my Sims are good.
We're also
If
mysterious
Satan.
crossbreeds between animals and humans.
Kurt, I don't see
Let
the
me
link.
explain.
I only see 3
The
stars.
Book of Enoch mentions how the 200 Watchers experimented on
Put it on
humans and
Discord.
animals to create monstrous hybrid beings. The book reads, the 200 angels choose animals on which to perform unnatural acts, including presumably humans. 200 donkeys, 200 rams, 200 goats, 200 beasts, from every animal, from every bird, for miscegenation. The outcome of the demonic corruption was violence, perversion, and a brood of monstrous beings. They defiled, they begot giants and monsters. Now, as we can see, the book of
By the way, this is one of the reasons, if not the main reason, for the flood of Noah's time and Noah's Ark. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like the huge flood that destroyed almost all of humanity. It was because the human race was changed so much. And in the Epstein files, you will see some of that too.
Enoch referred to giants and monsters, meaning there were several different hybrids created during this time. But I really want to point out what it means when these angels gathered these animals for miscegenation. This means there was some sort of reproductive process conducted by the fallen angels, and they used animal and human DNA to accomplish their experiments regarding these twisted beings. These monstrous hybrid creatures have been documented by humanity, but is taken as mythology. But what if it's far more real than we think? The Bible tells us in the days of Noah, there were non-human hybrid creatures known
There's still stories, by the way, in the villages of Bulgaria. Some old ladies will tell you stories of how they saw werewolves and whatnot.
as the Nephilim,
And snake
terrorizing
people.
humanity. Let's take a look back in time at some of the most popular half-human, half-animal hybrids documented throughout history. In Greek mythology, there is a being known as centaur. In Greek mythology,
so many
the
of them in
centaur are a
Greek
race
mythology.
of creatures that are part horse and part man, dwelling in the mountains of Thessaly and Arcadia.
Part
This
bull
could
and
very well
part
be one
man
of the
too.
outcomes of the Watchers' experiments in the Book of
Mermaids.
Enoch. This is how these creatures were created according to Greek mythology. The centaurs were usually said to have been born of Ixion and Nephili. Ixion is a human and fathered these beings, whilst Nephili is a spiritual being.
There's also a lot of incest in these Greek mythology stories, so it all makes sense. What if the Greek gods were actually Nephilim?
Doesn't this story sound familiar? As the story goes, Nephili was a cloud made into the likeness of Hera in a plot to trick Ixion into revealing his lust for Hera to Zeus.
But
Ixion
it is what
seduced
it is.
Nephili, and from that relationship, centaurs were
If
created.
you are, I'm going to watch
This is
them.
basically
No.
the same story of the fallen angels,
It's just
creating the
some sense,
hybrid
man.
beings through miscegenation. Miscegenation literally means reproduction through intimate relations. There are also other creatures in Greek mythology that are
Miscegenation
half
is
human
woohoo.
and half animal. They are
Which
known
is
as
something.
sirens.
Mhm.
Although most people refer to sirens as mermaids now, in Greek mythology,
Yeah, they're different creatures. They're way uglier than the mermaids, and they can fly, and they have these like bird beaks. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 was like the only one that actually depicted them correctly,
they are half bird, half human creatures.
with like weird
And as
small
we
legs.
know, the Book of Enoch said, the fallen angels took 200 of every bird to genetically manipulate them, which created hybrid creatures. One of the most renowned places in the world that speaks of these hybrid beings is none other
Yeah.
than ancient Egypt.
So much murder in
As
those
we analyze the
stories.
hieroglyphs, we see how the gods of Egypt are detailed. For example, Thoth, God of writing, wisdom, and magic, is depicted as having a bird head and a human-like body. Also, Horus has a similar appearance. As we look at the Egyptian gods, we begin to see nearly all of the gods are hybrids between animals and humans. My question is, were these hybrids worshipped as
Like a
gods in
harpy,
ancient
yeah.
Egypt? I think it is
The siren and
possible
the harpy.
that the creatures created by the fallen angels through miscegenation were worshipped as gods alongside the fallen angels, since the fallen angels could have just passed the advanced spiritual knowledge to their offspring, making them indistinguishable from an angelic being themselves as far as spiritual wisdom. One thing we must acknowledge is that the fallen angels in heaven wanted to be worshipped as gods, and they were casted to earth and were being worshipped as gods along with their offsprings. Perhaps some of these beings are still alive today, which is why creatures such as the Mothman have allegedly been spotted.
By the way, guys, in my years of being a complete and utter atheist, I had this like inexplicable desire to tattoo on my arm a really, really cool moth. It looked a little bit like this one. Obviously, this looks like Flyman. If you like remove the legs and the weird arms and the little horns and add like a crescent moon on the top, that's what I wanted on my arm. And I didn't. Thank God I didn't. Later, like maybe a year or two later, and I had these stickers that I would put on my arm over and over again. I had bought so many, and I was just thinking in my head, oh, I'll just put the stickers until I actually tattoo it on my arm, because it looks so freaking cool. And Satan works in such evil ways. Like, he will make you think that something is cool and you don't know why, but it's actually worshipping him. And it took me like a year or two to absolutely like randomly stumble on the fact that there's a moth called Lucifer, and then I googled it, and it looked exactly like the one that I wanted to tattoo on my arm. Like, in my atheist days, while being completely scientific and not believing in God and not believing that Satan is real, I wanted to tattoo a moth on my arm that its name is Lucifer. So, like, some of these things are pretty deep. And it's pretty crazy.
Mothman in West Virginian folklore
It
is a
looked a little
humanoid
bit like
creature
that one.
reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. And hence his name, he looks like he's partially a giant moth and partially a man. In mid-November 1966, in the
David
small town
Lynch,
of
yeah.
Point Pleasant, West
You guys
Virginia,
remember the movie The Fly
two
from the
young
90s?
couples fled the local woods, claiming they'd seen a terrifying creature. They recounted their story to the sheriff and reported that the entity looked human in most respects, except for its 10-foot wings and glowing red eyes. Mysterious beings that are believed to exist but haven't been proven to exist have been labeled as cryptids, and these cryptid creatures have been spotted all over the world. However, there is something very important I want to point out about these creatures.
Yeah, and when we find new ones, the government hide them.
They all have something in common for the most part. They all seem to look like hybrid creatures, which is why I made the comparison between the hybrids in the Book of Enoch and these mysterious cryptid creatures. The Bible did mention in Genesis 6:4 how the biblical hybrids existed before the Great Flood and also after. From this verse, we can further imply that a possible reason we're seeing these cryptid creatures is because they survived the flood. The Great Flood was actually meant to remove these abominations, not necessarily humans. God just knew in order to cleanse the earth, he needed to remove all of the corruption as a whole. These creatures are also known as abominations. God did not intend for these beings to exist, which is why most of them were eradicated. Even if we still see small signs of their existence, it's nowhere near as bad as it was in the days of old.
There's also another problem that stems from this fact that they were never intended to exist. And they came about from the coupling of human women with the fallen angels who joined Lucifer in the fall from heaven. So angels joined together with human DNA and they created this new hybrid that now, when it died, its soul didn't have a place to go. And that's what we call these days demons. Those are the evil spirits. And their destiny after death is to like roam the earth and try to possess people's bodies. And they have no place in heaven. They have no way of salvation, which is the sad part. But that also is kind of like tied to the agenda of Lucifer, because if he breaks, I think that that's his agenda, to break our connection to the Holy Spirit and to God, and our body is actually the temple of God, like our body is supposed to be the DNA creation that God created, that is able to be a home to God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit. And the moment that Satan ruins that genetic code, alters the creation, and then this body is no longer able to be served as a temple of God, he thinks that he can sever us from the Holy Spirit, and that way we can go to hell with him, to the lake of fire.
These hybrid creatures were terrorizing humanity, and they are even
Not
described in the
only
book of
destroying the
Enoch as demonic
creation,
beings. The spirits of
but
the
also
hybrids who
like our
perished in the
future.
Great Flood became what we now call demons. Perhaps this is why demonic creatures such as Baphomet look like a half-human, half-animal hybrid. Actually, now that I think about it, almost every demon that is depicted are all some kind of animal-human hybrid.
Have you guys seen demons? They always have like these animalistic features in them.
Individuals who are
They always
religious
have these animalistic features in their faces in them. The biggest lie that the devil did was convincing the world that he does not exist. That's true, Shred. So I was talking about this agenda, and it's a modern agenda these days, but it's when people say in the end times it's going to be like in the days of Noah, what they mean is, and what the Bible means is, back then there were this hybridization of human beings and the destruction of the human code that God created. And nowadays this happens too. And here's a little Pentagon briefing that I first saw in 2020. And I mistakenly, because I saw this in very, very small resolution, very, very tiny. It was maybe like less than half of this size. The person here who's talking looks a lot like Bill Gates, and his voice even sounds like Bill Gates, but it's not him. But this is nonetheless a Pentagon briefing on the subject of how to genetically modify humans with vaccines in order to silence, and this is genetic talk, to silence a gene. That's how you work with genetic modification in people. It's like a little bit like an on and off switch. So when you silence a gene, you stop it from working. To silence the VMAT2 gene, which is the God gene, which allows people to be, well, that's what they believe, in connection with spirit, in connection with God. But they call it religious fanaticism. So they were looking, and this is 2005, for ways to stop people from connecting to spirit.
Excuse me, on the left over here, we have individuals who are religious fundamentalists, religious fanatics. And this
I
is
guess if they knew me, that's what they would call me too, by the way.
the expression,
Just for
RT-PCR,
talking about
real-time
Jesus.
PCR expression of the VMAT2 gene. Over here, we have individuals. So let me complete. So over here,
He
we
does
have
sound like Bill Gates a little bit,
individuals who are
doesn't
not
he?
particularly
His
fundamentalists, not particularly religious, and you can see there's a much reduced expression of this particular gene, the VMAT2 gene. Another evidence that supports our hypothesis for the development of this approach.
What you're suggesting here is by spreading this virus, we're going to eliminate individuals from donning on a bomb vest and going into a market and blowing up the market.
So our hypothesis is that these
That's
are
the
fanatical
marketing
people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. Gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior.
And when you vaccinate with genetic therapy, you are altering the genetic code of the person. So what does that mean in spiritual talk? Shred says, my mom has been religious forever but never forced Orthodox Christianity on me. But recently when the Epstein files were uncovered, is this like the first time that you guys heard about them? the big ones like 2-3 weeks ago, I got super scared and such thing exists and started checking into it and got even more scared that it exists. So I turned to God for real. Oh my God, that's amazing, Shred. I mean, fear is not good because fear is not from God. He gives you peace and he gives you love, but it's good that you looked and it's brought you to God. And I'm super happy to hear it. Not joking, have been wearing a cross on me non-stop and praying every night. That's beautiful. Yes. So when you believe in Jesus, your destiny is in heaven. Your destiny is life abundant. He didn't come to judge us, by the way, for those of you who still don't believe and are atheists and whatnot. He didn't come to judge us. He came to give us life abundant and to give us an option into life, because if we die without him, we die in our sin. And if we die in our sin, our destiny is with the fallen angels and the lake of fire. And it wasn't built for humans. God loves us so much. God created us. He created us in the womb of our moms with so much love, all unique, and there's no one identical to you in the world. We're all so different and unique and created with so much love. He doesn't want us to die. So I'm so happy to hear that you're back to Jesus. I'm also planning to go to church and asking there to learn more about how to properly pray. You know what, Shred? I don't remember the exact book, but if you search in the Bible, in the New Testament, just Google it. There is a passage of how Jesus teaches his disciples how to pray. It's the most simple prayer, and if you search in Bulgarian, that's молитвата Отче наш, който си на небесата. Това е единствения начин. В смисъл, простичко, семпличко. Той ти го казва как да го правиш. And there's like a lot of deception in different churches and different denominations, and there's a lot of lies out there. So my advice would be, go to the origin. Go to what Jesus said. And if anyone is telling you to do something different from what Jesus said, then be aware that it might be a deception, it might be a lie. And to know more about God and Jesus, that's amazing. I'm so happy to hear it, Shred. I'm so freaking happy. Now I know that in the Bible it is constantly said, do not be afraid. Yeah, there's like 365 times in the Bible, one for each day. Do not be afraid, do not fear. Al tefached, ne se strahuvai. Fear not. Yeah, fear often turns people evil. Fear is such a... I don't want to do new age talk, but there's some truth to it. Like, it lowers your whole state of being, your spirit. It's like a bad spirit that is coming into you. So it comes in the mind, right? Satan attacks our mind first. So sometimes we have these negative thoughts and we think that that's our own thoughts. Sometimes those are actually attacks from the devil. And he starts speaking to you some negative shit. This and this is gonna happen and you're gonna be homeless and all kinds of weird shit. Like, if you stop it in your mind and you say to it, no, God's plan for me is different. Get out of my head. These are not my thoughts. When it's, because it's usually super random, right? You're thinking about lunch and what you're cooking, and then suddenly there's like this thought of, I'm gonna be homeless tomorrow. Like, what the fuck? Where did it come from? It's not mine. If you kick it out of your brain, and in the Bible it says take every thought captive. So if you control your own mind, there will be almost no fear, even in like dangerous situations. It's even in situations where in the flesh is what we say, in the laws of physics and the laws of this world, everything looks like it's against you. Sometimes God just steps in and creates this crazy miracle, great miracle for you, and saves you from it. So even in like super dangerous situations, having fear usually puts you into a less logical state of being and less capable of taking the right decision in the moment for yourself. So fear is like really bad. And it also says that fear is not from God. All I know is that Jesus has inventory dupe powers, and I'll be honest, it's super cool. Jesus is amazing, man. The way he was walking on water and stuff and putting people that were sleeping back to life. calling them back up to walk when they couldn't even walk for God knows 39 years? Do you know where to read a Bible that is not altered? So this would have to be a conversation shred, because I've been looking into Bulgarian Bibles, and I have one at my home that is in Old Bulgarian, с ътата накрая и с различни буквички, и си чета нея, но не знам от коя година е, честно казано. Всички казват, че превода от 40-та година, но не го вземай това като факт, защото може и да е грешно. От 40-та година била най-така правилната, но не съм сигурна. It's not new age though. Sometimes when people start talking about vibrations, low vibrations, high vibrations, if they start translating it into chakras and whatnot, then I'm like, no, this is new age. But there's definitely a resonance to emotions, and the entities of the devil and evil definitely feed on to the lower ones. They feed on to suffering and depression and anxiety and fear and all these bad things, because they're coming from them. It's like they give you the problem and then they feed off of your reaction. Miracle is all on yourself. Have you seen God? No. What do you mean, Kurt? I have seen many miracles, like God freed me from an impossible, complicated, multifaceted, impossible situation. And it was not one miracle, it was many miracles in my life that even allowed me to come back here in Bulgaria and to live this life and be free and then to be healthy. Like, he's done so many miracles, and sometimes it's like the small things and then it's the big things. He still does them, man. I prefer the old I know, Kurt. You like the gruesome stuff, you like the bloody stuff.
So we have some very, very
There are miracles.
remarkable data in this next slide. Here we have two brain scans. These are fMRIs. These are two different individuals with different levels of expression of VMAT2. On top is an individual who's a religious fanatic, an individual, and we've repeated this numerous
October
times,
2005, by the way.
has high levels of VMAT2. Now, this individual down here who had low levels of the VMAT2 gene, this individual...
I would have liked him to first define what's a religious fanatic before he even uses that term.
Individual would self-describe as not particularly religious.
Okay, we got it. They wanted to create a vaccine, and I bet you they did. I bet you, if they have the money, and they sure do, I bet they've done multiple, and they're doing experiments, and they were doing experiments to do that. But in order for them to do that, first they have to collect the DNA to see the genetic code of the person, to see if that gene in him is on or off, if it's expressed well enough or not. And how do people do that? How do you collect someone's DNA? And I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theorist. I'm saying this is an ex-medic. As a medicinal chemist, I've done these things in the lab. I've learned how to do these things in the lab in university. I've done them practically in the clinics. You do it with a PCR test, with a swab test. So this is another lady, if you don't believe me, she's going to tell you what a PCR test is.
But do you actually know what that is? It stands for polymerase chain reaction. Basically, it's a way to make a lot of copies of a portion of DNA. The reaction works by using an enzyme called polymerase, which uses the building blocks of DNA, called nucleotides, to build up more DNA from a template. When we do PCR, we have three main steps. First, we heat up the sample to separate the DNA into individual strands. Next, we throw in some primers which bind to the DNA and help polymerase figure out where to go. And finally, we add the polymerase and allow it to do its copying. After repeating these steps like 30 times, we end up with like over 1 billion copies of our original DNA.
Of your DNA. And yeah,